that mountain view we went. You can see that from the A5 on the other side. That hill. You know, there's a track going around it.
Yeah.
That's that was big. It's easy to walk that. Arenig Fawr. Yeah, I'll go bigger ones. Yeah, we'll get some now. Good bit of exercise, that one.
That's all summer doing that, moving bricks and shit there.
With the sunshine on that. Gof, Paul Henderson, ffrind da yn Gwrthwys ar ei hoff flynedd. In memory of Paul Henderson, good friend, at rest on his favourite mountain. I'll cite this on the stones in a minute. Right, there's Paul's cairn there. There's a little plaque in place. His ashes are underneath. As it is at the moment. I might very well be passing this place a couple times a year, maybe. Certainly once perhaps. So each time I come by I'll add a few more stones and gradually build it up. But say his ashes are laying to rest here now. So just say a few more words with Arenig Fawr as a backdrop. We've got the summit of Arenig Fawr there in the background. I just thought it'd be a bit appropriate. I'll now obscure the view and I'll say a few words. I met Paul Henderson in about 1983 in Liverpool. We had a mutual interest in the Welsh language and through that became best mates. We had a further mutual interest in beer. We spent a lot of time in a lot of pubs, primarily in the Welsh-speaking areas of North Wales. He mentioned several times over several years of a trip he did with a cousin years earlier, following the old railway track from Corwen to Bala, and in due course discovering the might of Arenig Fawr, which became his favourite mountain. Today he returns to that mountain, where now, having passed on, his ashes are placed on its flank aside the lake here, Arenig Fawr. Paul was well read, and we had both studied George Borrow's seminal work, Wild Wales. In 1854, George Borrow rented a house in Llangollen, and from there he set out walking around North Wales to learn something of the people and Welsh culture. He had acquired a good command of the Welsh language at a time when few natives knew a word of English. His explorations eventually concluded in South Wales, and in due course he recorded his adventure in a book titled Wild Wales. It's a book anyone interested in Wales and their language should read, and both myself and Paul have done so, as I mentioned. Arenig Fawr made an impression on my friend Paul in much the same way as it made an impression on George Borrow when he came upon it on his route between Festiniog and Bala over 150 years earlier. It is fitting, I think, to recite a short excerpt from Wild Wales, about halfway between Festiniog and Bala. George Borrow stopped at an inn for some beer at a location known as Rhyd Ven, and I quote, "Having finished my ale, I paid for it, and leaving the Calvinistic farmer still smoking, I departed from Rhyd Ven. On I went along the valley, the enormous hill on my right, a moel about half its height to my left, and a tall hill bounding the prospect in the east, the direction in which I was going. After a little time, meeting two women, I asked them the name of the mountain to the south. Arenig Fawr, they replied, or something like it. Presently, meeting four men, I put the same question to the foremost, a stout, burly, intelligent-looking fellow of about 50. He gave me the same name as the woman. I asked if anyone lived upon it. No, he said. Too cold for man. Fox, I said. No, too cold for fox. Crow, I said. No, too cold for crow. A crow will be starved upon it. I subsequently remembered that Arenig is mentioned in a Welsh poem, though in anything but a flattering and advantageous manner. The writer calls it Arenig Ddifaith, or Baron Arenig, and says that it intercepts from him the view of his native land. Arenig is certainly barren enough, but there is neither tree nor shrub upon it, but there is something majestic in its huge bulk. Of all the hills which I saw in Wales, none made a greater impression upon me." Unquote. My good mate Paul was similarly impressed by this mountain and proclaimed it his favourite. It is fitting, therefore, that his ashes are laid to rest upon it. So, that's it. He's now part of the mountain. I suppose rest in peace would be appropriate.